سلام، حالتون چطوره؟ خیلی خوش اومدین با یه ویدیو دیگه با من. این چنل آموزش زبان انگلیسی هستش. تمام ویدیوهایی که توی این چنل برگزاری میشه و تمام آموزش‌هایی که توی این چنل قرار داده میشه به همراه فیلم هستش و شما با استفاده از فیلم‌های متنوع میتونید دایره لغات خودتون رو گسترش بدین و همینطور بخش‌های متفاوتی از گرامرها و موضوعات دیگر رو بهش بپردازید. امروز ویدیویی که براتون بارگذاری کردم بخش دوم از فصل دوم 504 لغات ضروری هستش که جمع‌بندی تمام مباحثمون هست که برای امتحانی که در روزهای آتی قراره بابت این 7 درس بخش دوم با هم دیگه داشته باشیم داریم خودمون رو آماده میکنیم. پس بنابراین اگر تا این لحظه این چنل رو ساب نکردین حتما ساب کنید، لایک و کامنت یادتون نره و اینکه حتما زنگوله رو بزنید تا هر وقت براتون فیلم آپلود کردم ازش مطلع بشید و بتونید از اون فیلم ها استفاده بکنید. تقریبا فیلممون هم سعی میکنم توی 30 دقیقه تموم بشه به خاطر اینکه مرور کلی هستش روی لغاتمون و از درس 11 تا درس 14 504 لغات ضروری انگلیسی داخلش قرار گرفته. بریم که فیلممون رو با هم دیگه ببینیم.
Evidence, 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 evidence.
State's evidence. You might never see trial.
Invite evidence, which eludes us.
If I had, there would have been some evidence.
Evidence of the old glasses.
Solitary, 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 solitary.
It's the single solitary human being that's finished.
We were a very reserved group, it seemed, and without exception, solitary.
Your 5 years in solitary confinement are at an end.
Last time I did that, it cost me 2 years in solitary.
The war dragged on for 2 more solitary years.
Vision, 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 vision.
Who is this?
I had a vision of a world without Batman.
Wildfires, earthquakes, tsunamis, fucking nuclear war. That's the vision I keep having.
You're saying vision isn't just the stone?
If it weren't for those accords, vision would have been right here.
Still no word from...
Frequent, 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 frequent.
Our meals were small but frequent, for stamina.
I think you might be one of our most frequent visitors.
No, I would not, sir.
You frequent nightclubs?
I've had frequent visits from William Stryker.
He's been named as a frequent companion of Lou Bates and Steve Adams.
Glimpse, 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 glimpse.
Pippin saw in the Palantir a glimpse of the enemy's plan.
Instead, I give you a glimpse of the devastation my race can unleash upon yours.
I had a glimpse into the past.
We're going to give you a glimpse. Turn it over, please. In rare German newsreel footage, a quick glimpse of the escape was recorded.
Recent, 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 recent.
It could help cast some light on other recent incidents as well.
This comes after a recent congressional panel surprisingly votes in favor of legalizing personal drug possession without authorization.
It's not too recent.
Let's start looking for recent highline burglaries that have mystified us.
I understand his recent departure from St. Brendan's may be related to this problem.
Decade, 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 decade.
Heard you guys screaming for like a decade now.
Every decade, every goddamn century.
I haven't had a date in almost a decade because if a girl Googles me...
Could you walk me through what happened?
These qualities may be tested many more times in this decade.
No social gathering is without its Leonard Zelig joke, and in a decade of popular dance crazes, a new one sweeps.
Hesitate. 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 Hesitate.
Gandalf does not hesitate to sacrifice those closest to him, those he professes to love.
I will not hesitate to let either of you die.
Should you stand guilty before me again, I shall not hesitate to impose a custodial sentence.
But I will not hesitate. Not for a second.
But if I can be of any help, Marty, don't hesitate to ask.
Absurd. 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 Absurd.
This is absurd.
Our situation is absurd.
She and our infant son would be killed 2 years later by the Prussian grippe, an absurd little disease.
That he'd spent 4 years fulfilling the absurd and tedious duty of graduating from college.
It's bad enough that you've wasted your time with this absurd acting business.
Our situation is absurd.
She and our infant son would be killed 2 years later by the Prussian grippe, an absurd little disease.
Conflict. 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 Conflict.
With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring order to the galaxy.
To see all the possible outcomes of the coming conflict.
There is no conflict whatsoever.
Okay, so there's been conflict in the family because of your use then?
Because there's a conflict in every human heart between the rational and the irrational, between good and evil.
Minority. 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 Minority.
They are a minority of traitors and invaders.
Consider the minority opinion, but try to get along with the majority of opinion once it's accepted.
The vocal minority and a lot more besides.
Result of a courageous minority opinion is a resounding success for psychiatry. Result of maintaining a courageous minority opinion is a resounding success for psychiatry.
You said so yourself. There is no minority report.
Fiction. 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 Fiction.
Fiction, adventure.
This is a pleasant fiction, isn't it?
I mean, I've heard of him, but I don't really read that much.
Fiction, that is.
They made his entire childhood seem like fiction.
Well, this may appeal to your lurid taste in fiction, Watson.
Ignite. 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 Ignite.
We do not want to ignite the fear or hatred of anyone.
Will it not?
They ignite the tank. I shoot.
Look, it will ignite. Will it not?
I shoot the flares. They ignite the tank.
Perhaps enough to ignite a nation.
Abolish. 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 Abolish.
Must abolish it.
It's the amendment to abolish slavery.
The weapons of war must be abolished before they abolish us.
If Russia takes Turkey and Persia, the Tsar has said he will close our mosques and schools and abolish our languages.
Urban, 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 urban.
An issue for an upscale urban assignment.
The story is urban crime creeping into the suburbs. Viewers are more interested in urban crime creeping into the suburbs. Find our viewers are more interested in urban crime creeping into the suburbs.
Population, 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 population. Frank, 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 Frank.
You just gotta let me do it my way, Frank. Frank, you gotta trust me. You know, I mean, did Frank ever mention a name, you know, any... When we lost...
Pollute, 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 pollute.
We should pollute so God can restore.
Technically, I'm about to pollute.
He also attacked him with language, which I will not pollute my pen with describing.
You cannot pollute yourself with their food if you ever want to come back.
I didn't pollute the crime scene, Jesse.
Reveal, 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 reveal.
Reveal the location of the Grail, I'm afraid, but the knight promised that 2 markers that had been left behind would.
We never reveal the names of our guests as a matter of policy.
Reveal yourself! Reveal yourself!
Prohibit, 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 prohibit.
Most tourist stores prohibit that, you know?
While in the airport today, please observe Florida and local laws which prohibit smoking anywhere in the terminal.
Asked me to write the code to prohibit the kind of trading that I had been doing.
God keep your worship. I humbly give you leave to depart. Should a merry meeting be wished, God prohibit it.
Urgent, 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 urgent.
If that letter ain't urgent, them cows is what I'm saying.
He says no, but it's kind of urgent. He says no, but it's kind of urgent.
I write to you with urgent news. I'm coming to Vienna with urgent news. I'm coming to Vienna.
Adequate, 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 adequate.
It is crude, but it should be adequate to freeze Skywalker for his journey to the Emperor.
Adequate work without innovation.
And I do not think local hysteria is an adequate explanation myself.
His gut tells him what's good and what's merely adequate.
Decrease, 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 decrease.
You can only decrease his lead.
They'd rather die than they better do it and decrease the surplus population. They'd rather die than they better do it and decrease the surplus population.
But if he is to die, then let him die and decrease the surplus population.
If he's going to die, he'd better do it and...
Audible. 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 Audible.
Just now I find you all too audible.
You gotta work on that audible.
See? It's barely audible.
You gotta work on that audible.
Then you gotta call an audible.
Journalist. 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 Journalist.
I want to be a journalist.
Benedict is our finest journalist in Kigali, an expert on the subject.
Well, she's a journalist.
Uh-huh.
Famine. 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 Famine.
Or famine.
There will be 7 years of famine, my lord.
Okay, who can tell me what famine is? Okay, who can tell me what famine is? Okay, who can tell me what famine is?
If thou speakst false, upon the next tree shalt thou hang alive till famine cling thee.
Since the time of the great famine, they'd come...
Revive. 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 Revive.
Will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper.
It took Walt Higgins at the hotel nearly half an hour to revive Verena.
I fall over, she revives me.
Commence. 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 Commence.
All will commence in 2 minutes.
You may commence.
Police call will commence in 2 minutes.
You may commence. You may commence. You may commence.
We will commence with forming company.
Observant. 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 Observant.
Honest with him, just very observant. Especially observant? I'm not obsessed with him, just very observant.
He loved me very much, but he was not very observant.
Especially observant?
He loved me very much, but he was not very observant.
Especially...
Identify. 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 Identify.
We have you on our screen now. Please identify. We have you on our screen now. Please identify. Can you identify yourself?
Not now. Maybe later.
I can identify him.
Migrate. 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 Migrate.
Flocks or majestic V's, she flies alone. While other species migrate in aerodynamic flocks or majestic V's, she flies alone.
Wolves migrate.
The problem is now they're starting to migrate.
vessel, 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 vessel.
And spared my life for one reason.
In my time, where I come from, this is a simple mining vessel. In my time, where I come from, this is a simple mining vessel.
Then ask Captain Nero, what gives him the right to attack a Federation vessel?
Persist, 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 persist.
I would stake my reputation. Very. I would stake my reputation. He is as sane as I am. So why does he persist in such a story? Very. I would stake my reputation. He is as sane as I am. So why does he persist in such a story?
I could have you beheaded, yet you persist. Why?
But you don't know why. Since you persist in dying, I will.
Hazy, 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 hazy.
I get hazy is where the cleaning woman shows up the following morning and finds your wife in bed with her lover riddled with .38 caliber bullets.
I can understand if his history is a little hazy.
Hazy sunshine through Wednesday.
I can understand if his history is a little hazy.
Gleam, 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 gleam.
It's the one with the gleam of intelligence. It's the one with the gleam of intelligence. It's the one with the gleam of intelligence.
That what's selling these days has the juicy gleam, the bloody smell of truth.
Well, let's just say, well before that overrated Sphinx would become a gleam in the eyes of its primitive.
Editor, 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 editor.
Said he's the first Jewish editor of the Globe. Said he's the first Jewish editor of the Globe. How's that new editor working out?
The new editor arrives on Monday.
Unruly, 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 unruly.
He makes an unruly scholar.
Unruly, and therefore cannot be ruled.
But he makes an unruly scholar. But he makes an unruly scholar. But he makes an unruly scholar.
It appears to be a protest of some kind, and officials are describing the crowd as unruly.
Unruly mob. But wait, what's this?
And now some unruly criminals who are also policemen are...
Rival, 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 rival.
Hart's WWE career had come to an end.
But new challenges awaited him as Brett headed to the rival WCW. Brett would lose the title that night, but a new rival was waiting in the wings. Bret Hart's WWE career had come to an end, but new challenges awaited him.
Violent, 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 violent.
Cyber terrorism. Violent crimes, narcotics, cyber terrorism.
Please say violent robbery if your life was in peril.
For the first time in my life, I began to know really violent thoughts. For the first time in my life, I began to know really violent thoughts.
He's violent enough already.
Brutal. 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 Brutal.
And dark. Rome is the light. It is brutal and cruel and dark. Rome is the light.
They're not human, they're brutal!
Must have been brutal.
Opponent. 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 Opponent.
Your opponent. They're more than just a man in the mind of your opponent.
An open man can't see a blind man, and it will cost you twice the ante to see your opponent.
Now, my young opponent here wants to gut the Gotham Renewal Program, established by
Brawl. 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 Brawl.
In the ensuing brawl.
This is not a duel, it's a brawl.
The doctor said you were hurt in a street brawl. The doctor said you were hurt in a street brawl. The doctor said you were...
Duplicate. 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 Duplicate.
Somebody made a duplicate of my vault. It was staged. Somebody made a duplicate of my vault. It was staged. Somebody made a duplicate of my vault. It was staged. Somebody made a duplicate of my vault.
No, I'm not sure I can duplicate the intensity I had the other day.
Vicious. 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 Vicious.
He's enterprising, aggressive, outgoing, young, bold, vicious. This vicious young hoodlum will be transformed out of all recognition. He's enterprising, aggressive, outgoing, young, bold, vicious.
The vicious tragedy and senselessness of the brutal shooting, as well as the victim's final moments, were all caught in graphic video, which we are...
Whirling. 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 Whirling.
Molecules are whirling. The molecules are whirling.
He saw the stars above his face whirling on their silent and sleepless axis, and the leaves of the trees rustling against them.
The molecules are whirling.
A whirling dervish out there, a whirling...
Underdog. 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 Underdog.
An underdog, named for an underdog.
Thrust. Thrust. Thrust.
Not what he said, using atmosphere as thrust.
The thrust of the launch combined with the simultaneous lateral vibration liquefied the cubes and created an unbalanced load.
Bewildered. Bewildered. bewildered, bewildered, bewildered.
It's just that I'm rather bewildered.
They are bewildered? No, they're...
از اینکه تا پایان این ویدیو منو همراهی کردین خیلی ازتون ممنونم و ساب یادتون نره، لایک و کامنت حتما برام بذارید و زنگوله رو بزنید تا هر وقت براتون ویدیوی جدید آپلود کردم ازش مطلع بشین. تا جلسه بعدیمون که امتحان این جلسات هستش. خدافظ.